That's a lot of talent. Hakeem was one of the greatest big guy with that LAKERS. He could do a lot of things in the low post, and he would just go like, wow.
I watched him evolve. When I first met him, he was a great player, but I thought at times he was pretty selfish, one-sided in his opinion, and then he was everything but that. He evolved into one of the most honorable men that I ever met.
All championship teams have an attitude, and the Rockets had a great attitude. They were not to be denied.
And the Houston Rockets, led by Hakeem Olajuwon, are the world champions of 1994.
To take it to championship basketball has nothing to do with the game. The subtleties of being a champion is all about the interactions with inside the team, the disciplines that are bestowed from one night to another before you even walk on the floor dictate if you're going to be a champion.
That was all you.
The 32-year-old Olajuwon is the NBA's best player.
There's nobody like him. He killed Shaq. After the first game, you could see he was done. He knew this guy was too much for him.
It was Hakeem versus Shaq, but it was really more about the miseducation of the Orlando Magic.
They were embarrassed. Shaq was embarrassed.
I'm gonna go with the philosophy that Hakeem Olajuwon gave me. You're not the best until you win. And if you're really the best, you win multiple times.
In 2002, 7 years after Olajuwon won his second consecutive title, another player with size, raised in an entirely different part of the world, was destined for Houston.
Back then, we did not really choose what we can do, but we can select to do what are we capable of. So I'd be selected to play basketball because I'm tall, obviously.
I went there in December. It was freezing. Everyone in the building was chain smoking. And the players were wearing winter parkers on the bench. This is where Yao Ming came from. It's amazing that he had any success at all in that environment.
We call it sports academy. Play basketball every day and go to school in the morning. We're playing for either province or city or maybe for national team. The money is very little pay, but we all people a chance to serve our country. Competition in sports is always bound and related to those honor. And the honor can be a state level and it also can be family level.
He was raised by great parents. Great parents.
The Houston Rockets select Yao Ming from Shanghai, China.
To think what he did, coming from China to the United States, to play in the NBA.
And get dunked on by Kobe. Yeah, I know Kobe was the first NBA player to dunk on Yao Ming.
He was very difficult to guard.
He was.
I remember Shaq telling me he had a hard time playing against him.
That wasn't his center. The first player that wasn't named Shaquille O'Neal to dunk on. The first guard to dunk on Yao Ming. In the game, during an NBA game. Yes.
This is your nation that if you want to win, that is one game your honor on the court.
The perseverance this guy had, he was the most diligent worker that I've ever coached. Sense of humor was great, but this is what separated him. He was truly unselfish. He was so happy when other guys had big games.
I had a chance to play a big 3-4 years again. I love him. He inspired me in so many ways.
My voice is language, so they don't need English. You can naturally understand it.
I did not realize Louis Carter had played with Houston when. Yeah, he did. He did. He did play with Houston all that time. With T-Mac and them.
He was humble, sharp, respectful of the game, just a backseat. And
better served to bend 7 feet.
Years and years, Adrian. You always trying to fight back.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Good morning. Well, yeah, I just seen they did a little profile on Hakim not too long ago. It's awesome. Speaking of Hakim, right? The New York Times, under their commercial real estate sections on their website, on the paper in 2006, on December the 6th of 2006. This is an article by Kate Murphy, and it's titled "A Slam Dunk in Houston Real Estate." And it has a picture of a building. It says Hakeem Olajuwon transformed the historic bank building in downtown Houston, which he bought in 1994, into a mosque. He was careful to maintain its gold leaf domed interior and limestone and marble colonnaded exterior. Houston, December 5th. I was born in December, and there's been a lot of significant dates in my life. If you read Ernie Johnson's Unscripted, that had that poem about 9/11, 2001 that I read earlier. If you read that book, he there's this part of the book where he breaks down a sequence of events and dates in like chronological or semi-chronological order that end up making sense, and the significance of it in his life, and how he saw that as blueberry moments, kind of sort of. But I'll pick up the book and read it and see what I'm talking about. December has always been one of those months in my life where I've always had to look out. The location where your mother was while she was pregnant with you in December of 2013 has such a close correlation to the Ebola outbreak that ended up semi halfway leading to your mother being denied the visa to come to the United States while she was pregnant with you after going for an interview and being hit with the typical American bullshit administrative processing. If you're an immigrant or somebody who've tried to apply for a visa to come to America, you've gone to an interview and you've seen the words administrative processing, you know what I mean. Administrative processing 101. But now what I mean by that, by December, Nelson Mandela passed away on December the 5th of 2013. Around that same time, the first patient zero from the Ebola outbreak passed away in Guinea, and and not too far from where that patient zero passed away, that triggered that Ebola outbreak that led to your mother's visa denial in March of 2014, and your eventual birth in July 27th of that year. It's the dates and the numbers are too close together for it to be just a coincidence to be ignored, you know what I mean? Hopefully, if you're 18 right now listening to this, you've probably realized what your father is hinting at, you know what I mean? I think that you got a lot of sense for you to know what I mean by that. What they talk about? Oh, they talk about my man Dirk. Yo, Mark Cuban. You was one smart ass white boy, yo. I ain't gonna lie. Yeah. Thank you for how you handled that whole potential scandal that could have been with your team. I mean, especially when you got players like Dirk. So now you see why I am happy that we got Mo Wagner, you know what I mean? A young German with good values, a German who grew up in the time of Germany where the leader in his country was Angela Merkel, probably the greatest leader in the world in the last 15 years, not named Barack Hussein Obama. Yes, I can make that argument. So, but I digress. New York Times, a slam dunk in Houston real estate, December 6th of 2006. Houston, December 5th. A former player for the Houston Rockets is becoming as celebrated in the city's real estate circles as he was on the basketball court. Hakeem Olajuwon, the soft-spoken Nigerian emigre who led his team to two NBA championships, has also done extremely well flipping real estate in his adopted hometown. Following an unorthodox yet disciplined strategy, he has managed to make as much in real estate in the last 10 years as he did in his 17 seasons playing professional basketball.
Those years ago,
What's y'all talking about?
Now, you've got to think about somebody who's primarily
Yo,
a player.
Hideo Tokulu was vicious. Tokulu, Stojakovic.
But just think as they were.
Can't forget about Ginobili, but Hideo Tokulu though.
You take all these big kids today, 7'4", 7'5" guys. None of them shoot the sky hook. They out there shooting at the top of the circle and out in the corner.
Cause they're not working on their craft, on their post game. You know what I mean? What up, Mo? Please work on your post game. You my rookie of the year, Wagner. Just like freaking Kuzma was my rookie of the year, even though Donovan Mitchell got robbed. What up, Simmons? Did you learn how to read and write English yet? I'm sorry, guys. Feeling a little cranky, just woke up, but I'm really not. Ben Simmons is an idiot. Has anyone heard that boy talk? Can barely articulate himself. But I digress. Following an unorthodox yet disciplined strategy, he has managed to make as much in real estate in the last 10 years as he did in his 17 seasons playing professional basketball. He buys high and sells higher, says David L. Cook, executive vice president with the commercial real estate firm Cushman & Wakefield, who has represented Mr. Olajuwon in several transactions. Many of the former NBA All-Stars real estate plays caused market watchers in Houston to shake their head because they felt he overpaid. He buys expensive user land that is already fully developed, said Marvy A. Finger, president of the Finger Companies, which specializes in developing multi-family properties in Houston and other cities in the South and Southwest. Such land is usually excruciatingly slow to appreciate and even at risk of depreciation. But Mr. Olajuwon, 43, that was what, 12 years ago? So Olajuwon is about 55 right now? Okay. But Mr. Olajuwon, 43, has managed to at least double and even quadruple his money, reselling often within a year or two of purchase, according to brokers and lawyers involved in the deals. Judging from changes in county appraisal listings, profits from his 25 total transactions have easily exceeded $100 million. Wow. His timing has been amazing, said Ed Wolf, with an U, president of Wolf and Company, a retail broker and developer in Houston. The properties Mr. Olajuwon buys are often ripe for further development, like parcels near Houston's new light rail line in the Texas Medical Center and close to the city's baseball stadium, Minute Maid Park. He has also bought and sold centrally situated or inner loop properties near major intersections and highway exits. And in November, he bought a prime 14-acre tract near the Johnson Space Center of NASA. Mr. Olajuwon, who retired in 2002, divides his time between homes in Houston and Amman, Jordan. A Muslim, he has been spending more time in Jordan recently to learn Arabic, the language of the Quran. He already speaks English and Yoruba, a Nigerian dialect. Rich in Jordan, Mr. Olajuwon said he uses imagination when looking at the property. I tried to see its potential, what it could be used for, he said, adding that he studies satellite views of Houston to help him identify good investments. His advisor said he studied maps and continually sought additional information about nearby building valuations, planned public improvements, and traffic patterns. It has not hurt his fortunes that the real estate market in Houston has been on an upward trend in recent years. Houston real estate has continued to be strong across the board: apartment, retail, and office, Mr. Wolf said. We added 75,000 jobs this year, so we're not feeling the pinch like other places. Regardless, Mr. Olajuwon's friends said it was no accident that he had been so successful. He was well known for his intelligence and diligence as a basketball player. He won a gold medal with the United States at the 1996 Olympics, and he is the top shot blocker in league history. The guy is really smart and will not stop working at something until it's right, said a former teammate, Clyde Drexler. Clyde the Glide. I mean, the guy lived at the gym when we were playing. Though real estate speculation is inherently risky, Mr. Olajuwon said he was more comfortable buying land than stocks. I like real estate because, it's real. And because he only buys Main Street type properties, he is safer than investing in outlying areas where value is less certain. He's an astute, I love that word, astute. If you don't know which word I'm talking about, it's ASTUTE.
And what would become his first love?
I think it started when I was
They're talking about the boy LeBron.
5 years old.
What up, Bron?
Me and my friend.
Yo, I ain't gonna lie, dog. In 2003, when I was graduating high school, you was coming in the NBA, bro. If they would have told me you was gonna end up being a Laker while I was living in Los Angeles in 2018, hey, knowing me 9 times out of 10, especially that I probably shook my head and just laugh it off and be like, they're like, yeah, I don't know about that. I'd have probably told them some of them bad about me living in Africa back at that time. I always knew that I was gonna want to go back to Africa. You know what I mean? Like, I'm just saying, there was a time when foreigners, especially Africans, West Africans, Sierra Leoneans to be specific, since that's where I'm from. Let me speak of the people that I know. When people used to leave their homelands and visit the West, get an education, get something, and then go back. You know what I mean? There's like maybe one or two ENTs, like an ear, nose, and throat doctor. There's like one or two, maybe three ENTs in the entire Freetown, Sierra Leone. Quite literally, and two of them has been doing it in the country for like at least 50, 60 years. You know what I mean? These two doctors have treated about maybe three, almost, they're probably treated in the fourth generation of kids now that they've treated their whole careers. Yeah. But
A crowd of about 10,000 people expected here in Cleveland as LeBron Mania goes national for the first time.
hey, when that was going on, your daddy was in high school.
He had probably
I was about 19. I was 18 going on 19, you know what I mean?
ESPN and ESPN2 that Russell and Chamberlain were.
Keeping up the paper today, this is LeBron Mania has hit this area. Cover of Sports Illustrated.
In those days, you had to come home and sit in front of the TV and see what was going on. You couldn't just be out and get it on your phone or write an essay is happening, or write an essay had happened. I don't miss those days, but I kind of miss the simplicity of those days. If they could have added the technology without the dumbassery of the instant gratifying quickness of social media, it'd be awesome.
I think for me and my
If you're old head like me, you know what I
my
mean.
childhood friends was the ones that was there for me with the game of basketball and sports was just pure innocent. And they saw me.
Okay. Yeah, astute, ASTUTE. That's a beautiful word. I love that word. He is an astute and opportunistic buyer who seems to be keenly aware of opportunities, says W. Michael Hasler, first vice president of the real estate company CB Richard Ellis, whose clients have sold property to Mr. Olajuwon. He buys whole or half blocks and out parcels, which are valuable donut hole properties surrounded by land owned by someone else. Another way Mr. Olajuwon minimizes risk is cash-only transactions. It is against Islamic law to charge or pay interest, so he never seeks outside finances. In Arabic, in the Quran, they call it riba. Like it's kind of spelled like R-I-B-I, but with a stress on it. You know what I mean? For English speakers out there, it's called riba, interest, which is a no-no. Like how I saw my imam who had just preached about the same interest, and right after that Friday service, moms had to go to your namesake had to go to the bank, and while we standing there waiting, we seen the imam taking money out of the ATM. You know what I mean? Don't get me wrong, you gotta keep your money safe, but don't preach to me about the ills of interest and then you keep your money in a bank that collects interest on your money, that use your money and makes interest over it. But another way Mr. Olajuwon minimizes risk is cash-only transactions. It is against Islamic law to charge or pay interest, so he never seeks outside finances. I have been blessed thus far to be able to work with my own capital, which gives me the ability to decide when I want to sell as opposed to having a bank loan hanging over my head that in some cases can force you to sell even though you may not be ready to, Mr. Olajuwon says. It also gives him a leg up on other buyers who may hesitate trying to cobble together funds. Cash on hand immediately gets you a front row seat, Mr. Hasler says. You're viewed as higher priority. Money talks, bullshit works. Adding to Mr. Olajuwon's cash flow is his recent purchase of a parking garage in Houston's Central Business District. Yo, speaking of parking garage, right? Baby girl, right now, 4 years old, you've probably been to the pharmacy at PZ like maybe, I say, you've probably been there maybe 45 times out of the year. That's an average of once a week, you know what I mean? Maybe more. You see that big building, that big block of PZ building where you got all those shops running around, that PZ building? People know, everybody around there, all those dollar men, all those people know. I always say, yo, if God ever put me in a position to afford the capital to get that piece of land, I will break that building down. Knock that motherfucking shit down. Guess what I'm gonna put up there? I'm gonna put in the 6 levels parking garage. 6 levels high and maybe 2 levels underground. Like they say in Freetown, we pick it and grand pick it and great grand pick it and then they put it and die. I'm just saying, you know what I mean? See, in America, that's what you call white wealth. I'm just saying, but yeah. Adding to Mr. Olajuwon's cash flow is his recent purchase of a parking garage in Houston's Central Business District. The garage had 150 parking contracts when he bought it in October, and now has 900, thanks in part to nearby construction that eliminated much of the surface parking in the surrounding area. Another source of income is land he owns on the outskirts of downtown Houston, which he leased for 99 years in February to Mr. Finger. Yo, Olajuwon just created his own form of white wealth. Go ahead, brother. Look at that. Man, hey. If you haven't gotten where I'm going with this yet, The man has made more in real estate in 10 years than he made in 17 years of playing basketball professionally. Yes. And granted, players are getting a lot more money now compared to what Olajuwon and them was getting in the 90s, you know what I mean? Because he retired in 2002, so he made his money in the 90s. He made his runs in the 90s. So, long story short, it's not too far-fetched for the 70% of the African American players in the NFL to want to be able to look at the rest of this NFL season in which the opening game ended with the score 18-12, as in the War of 1812, as in the time the national anthem was written by Francis Scott Key in Baltimore, Maryland. It's not that far-fetched for you to want to say, okay, maybe we should be able to send a shock to the system in a way where we can pull back and use some of the capital we already have and join together and get into investments and see what that can do for us and our communities compared to just I'm just saying, like, I have a radical mind, but 85 to 90% of my ideas are not that far-fetched, and 99% of the time it's not impossible. It takes time. That's it. You know what I mean? I just, if you don't get where I'm going with this, I don't know how you thinking about it, why you seeing it. Hopefully, I'm not. Hopefully, maybe you might want to go find the article yourself and read it to really get the gist of it for yourself. If I've ruined it for you, you know. But yeah, let's see here. Adding to Mr. Olajuwon's cash flow is his recent purchase of a parking garage in Houston's Central Business District. The garage had 150 parking contracts when he bought it in October, and now has 900, thanks in part to nearby construction that eliminated much of the surface parking in the surrounding area. Another source of income is land he owns on the outskirts of downtown Houston, which he leased for 99 years in February to Mr. Finger, who plans to build a high-rise apartment building on the site. Referring to the 7-foot-tall former basketball player's frame, Mr. Finger said, "He's pretty imposing when he comes in and sits down to negotiate." Mr. Olajuwon said he now wanted to move to the next level and try his hand at developing properties. He is a fan of architecture and design, particularly Islamic geometric styles, classic Palladian structures, and the modernist work of the architect Richard Mayer. Mr. Olajuwon said when he traveled to other cities while playing basketball, the first thing I'd noticed was the architecture. Dude, I'm like that too, man. I ain't gonna lie. I 7 out of 10 times I can't recognize half of it, but I can tell when something is Gothic, when something is Ionic, and when something is Doric, at least. That much I can tell. You know what I mean? I'm you know, I can't fake through it like George Costanza can, but I can try my best in my own alpha way. You know. Mr. Olajuwon also designs many of his own clothes. Indeed, his sartorial sense once landed him on the pages of GQ magazine. "I like clean lines," he said. "Yeah, you straight African, bro. Gotta stay clean." Mr. Olajuwon has already transformed a historic bank building in downtown Houston, which he bought in 1994, into a mosque. You know, your grandfather, my pops, was telling me one time, right? It's this part in the Quran where he says that anybody, even if good deeds, there's certain things that any Muslim does, that if you do those things, you're automatically granted heaven and you won't get slapped on your way into paradise or something like that. I can't remember the exact back context consequence of it, but he's saying that two of the things that I remember instinctively from that conversation I had with him was that if a Muslim rescues his parents or her parents from bondage, from slavery, he or she is automatically granted heaven. And if like somebody who calls people not to prayer, like anyone who builds a place of worship for the deen, and more specifically brings calls people to prayer, is automatically granted Jannah. You know what I mean? Like I'm sorry, it's automatically granted heaven. You know what I mean? That just popped in my head when I saw the whole him building the mosque, which is awesome. Awesome, by the way. You know what I mean? I'm sorry, white America. You know what I mean? That's the subject matter I'm talking about. That's like Jerry Jones having money and building a church. You know what I mean? You just don't like that I'm talking about another religion. I'm just talking about God for real. So it's just my belief system has certain terminologies as opposed to your terminologies with your belief system in worshiping that one God. Can I get a high five, Trump America? Ah. Yeah, I can kiss my light-skinned African ass too. I'm sorry. Mr. Olajuwon has already transformed the historic bank building in downtown Houston, which he bought in 1994, into a mosque. While preservationists feared he would irrevocably alter the original 1928 construction, Mr. Olajuwon was careful to maintain its neoclassical features, including its gold leaf domed interior and limestone and marble colonnaded exterior. The bank's basement vault now houses an extensive library of Islamic texts. Though he has now ruled out investing in other cities, Mr. Olajuwon said his focus remained in Houston. It's where I have the home court advantage. Yo, I hadn't realized how he had ended up in Boston. Thank you for that basketball diary story, basketball love story. I feel you on that, bro. If I would have been in your position to want to just leave the East Coast and just come out west and see the different weather, as far as scholarship, school area, and all that, how that came to be, I would have stayed in Houston too, dog. I would have stayed in Houston too.
LeBron breaking people's heart, wanting to get his own heart broken. Coach K, Jerry Colangelo, reinvent American basketball. Analytics transform the sport. The league. I love basketball. You love basketball. So sit back and relax and watch episode 10 right now.
Yo, there was this.
For the Cleveland Indians, it was the catch. For the Cleveland Cavaliers, it was the shot.
That's who he did that against. I wasn't in America when MJ was doing this thing. That's why I always told people Kobe is my MJ. You know what I mean? That's what I witnessed. And I like Tracy to tell me. Little girls used to put down their Barbies just to go watch Michael Jordan play. You know what I mean? So, MJ is the man.
Cleveland sports fans believing they were doomed and that there was nothing that could save
Hey, so if you want to shut down a LeBron MJ argument, right? Ask the question. If you had a choice to draft MJ or LeBron number one overall, who would you draft?
40 miles outside of Cleveland.
I'm sorry, Bron, but even you would not drop yourself over MJ. Come on, dog. You know I'm not lying, dog. Now you're honest 80s baby.
Trace, the chosen one, possibly the first pick in next month's NBA draft. And in just about 2 hours from right now, in fact, we find out which NBA team will most likely pick the Akron basketball superstar.
Forget Cleveland sports history, the heartbreaks, the blown chances, the injuries, the mistakes, and the horrible endings. Our luck changes tonight.
The first pick in the 2003 NBA draft goes to the Cleveland Cavaliers.
I stumbled up on this awesome ass piece like last year in December the 10th of 2017. It was from the Boston Globe. It is titled Boston Racism Image Reality. The Spotlight Team takes on our hardest question. By the Spotlight Team on Sunday, December 10th of 2017. This series was reported by Akila Johnson, Todd Warlock, Nicole Dunca, Duncngca, Liz Kowalczyk, Andrew Ryan, Adrian Walker, and editor Patricia Wen. Today's story was written by Johnson. Akila Johnson, okay. Like when I say it is like a whole, it is a big ass introspective piece. Like whoever decides to read this is probably gonna take you in one sitting, about maybe 2.5 hours straight to read through all 7 days of everything they've done in this series. It is awesome. I'm just gonna go through day one. You know what I mean? That's all I can muster. So yeah. Now let's see here. Google the phrase, quote, most racist city, close quote, and Boston pops up more than any other place, time and time again. It may be easy to write that off as a meaningless digital snapshot of what people say about us and what we say about ourselves. Proof of little beyond the dated or hopefully outdated memories of Boston's public and fierce school desegregation battles of the 1970s. Except that Boston's reputation problem goes much deeper than an online search. A national survey commissioned by the Globe this fall found that among 8 major cities, black people ranked Boston as least welcoming to people of color. More than half, 54%, rated Boston as unwelcoming. Among African Americans, how welcoming are these cities to people of color? Little wonder that some comedians and athletes take aim at Boston, like Michael Che of Saturday Night Live this year, telling a global TV audience this was the most racist city I've ever been to. Or HBO's John Oliver suggesting that he took this summer's anti-bigotry march on Boston Common to finally make Boston unracist. That didn't do it, John. That ain't gonna change Boston no time soon. And I'm gonna be honest with you, I've been to Boston one time, and if it wasn't for my marriage to your mother and my connection to your auntie in Boston, I would have never been to Boston till maybe later on in life, maybe after this, because I never had any intentions to go to Boston. Like P always used to tell me, he had an aunt in Boston as well. He had family in Boston. I mean, he spent some time there. He kind of grew up there a little bit. That's why he was telling me he fucked with, what's his name, Alan Payne, because that Blue Hill Avenue or Hill Street Blues or some shit. That movie, y'all know which movie I'm talking about. But I had never been to Boston, and I'm very perspective in the sense I pay attention to people's body language and their facial features more than what they say out their mouth. You know what I mean? Sometimes to my detriment, but Michael Gladwell's blink have confirmed to me that I'm not wrong in doing that. Boston is racist as fuck. That's one of the reasons why this article grabbed my attention as such. But moving on. The reputation is real and pervasive, but most important, is it deserved? The Globe Spotlight team analyzed data. The Globe Spotlight team analyzed data, launched surveys, and conducted hundreds of interviews to answer just that question. Spotlight examined the core of Boston's identity, our renowned colleges and world-class medical institutions, the growth that keeps expanding our skyline, business and politics, and our championship sports teams. And the Spotlight reporters, to get a sense of how much black residents are part of the mainstream of the city, did something decidedly old school. They visited a number of iconic Boston places and simply counted the number of black people they saw. Like how I was able to count like all the 6 black folks during the Senate confirmation hearing earlier. All told, the findings were troubling. The reasons are complex. But this much we know. Here in Boston, a city known as a liberal bastion, we have deluded ourselves into believing we've made more progress than we have. Los Angeles is kind of almost the same, y'all. But there's a lot more. There's about 70% more progress in LA than it is in Boston for minorities. But LA has a more of a lenient, liberal, wealthiest state of mind type progress. You know what I mean? So that's why I can't really give him too much credit for being as progressive as LA touts itself to be. I'm sorry. Lending voice to thoughts here, people. I'm sorry. And saying sorry is not a sign of weakness, yeah. John Wayne was wrong about that. Okay? Men are supposed to be able to apologize like that. You know what I mean? Like, I'm just saying. You know? To err is human. But this much we know. Here in Boston, a city known as a liberal bastion, we have deluded ourselves into believing we've made more progress than we have. Racism certainly is not as loud and violent as it once was, and the city overall is a more tolerant place. But inequities of wealth and power persist, and racist attitudes remain powerful, even if in more subtle forms. They affect what we do and what we don't do. Boston's complacency with the status quo hobbles the city's future. Look at the seaport, a whole new neighborhood rising on the South Boston waterfront that benefited from $18 billion in taxpayer investments, and you see none of the richness of an increasingly diverse city. Look at Boston's lauded colleges and realize black students remain rare. The percentage of black enrollment at many top universities has not increased appreciably in 3 decades, stuck in the single digits. Look at our political institutions and try to recall how many black politicians have been elected to statewide office or to the top job in City Hall in the last half century. Answer: 2. Speaking of how many black politicians elected to places, right? So Obama became a senator representing Illinois, in the early 2000s? Yeah. 2002. Is it 2002 or 2000? I think 2002. Okay. And when he became, let me get my little calculator out real quick, because George Washington's first term was in what, 1789? 1789, yeah, 1789. He did 1 term to 73, and then Adams did 2 terms, and then Jefferson did 2 terms, 1805, Louisiana Purchase, yeah, okay, 1789, Washington, right? That was the first official Congress of the United States. Hiram Revel was the first black senator in the United States, and that happened after Reconstruction, so namely 1877. So almost 100 years after the first Senate, you had the first black senator. Okay, between 1877 and 2002, let's say 2002 for the sake of argument. 2002 minus 1877, that's 125 years. In 125 years, five, quite literally, five black senators. The Voting Rights Act went into effect 68, and so let's take that into account. 125 years, give or take away 50 years from that, or take away about 40 years from that. So let's say 85, 90 years. 90 years that you couldn't even vote for somebody that looked like you. I mean, I get that. So, yeah. And since Obama, we've had Cory Booker, Kamala Harris, and what's that guy that always stands there behind Trump from South Carolina? Tim Scott. Who else? Am I missing somebody? I'm not talking about House of Representatives now. I'm talking about senators, like people who decide confirmations on things like Supreme Court justices, people who confirm Secretary of Departments and shit like that. Yeah. And so 1789, so let's say about 8. Right now it's 2018 minus 1789. 229 years. In 229 years, 8 black senators. Man, those numbers suck. Y'all. Back to Akela Johnson and the Boston Globe. Hi, Akela and the B. What's up, girl? Truculent. That's where I first heard that word, truculent, and that was like an awesome ass word. I digress though. Look at our political institutions and try to recall how many black politicians have been elected to statewide office. They're talking about Boston here, right? Or to the top job in City Hall in the last half century. Answer 2. Peek if you can into corporate boardrooms in Massachusetts, where only 1% of board members at publicly traded firms are black. Step into the newsroom and front offices of media organizations anywhere in Boston, including the Globe's page 1 deliberations, and see few black faces. And look at the area's middle-class black neighborhoods if you can find one. There also are not many downtown restaurants and bars where black patrons can go spontaneously and see others who look like them. Living in Boston can be a particularly isolating experience for black professionals. Although the city's vast sports, entertainment, and cultural offerings are open to all, it's perhaps little wonder why black people are hard to spot at, say, a Red Sox or Patriots game or the Museum of Fine Arts. It could be they simply choose not to go, or it could be the cost. Man, we can't afford that shit. Like, it's only like when a professional team is playing in DC or maybe Tampa Bay recently I've seen, or some parts in North Carolina I've seen, that you see black faces in the audience because the camera can't go that far high up all the time, you know what I mean? But other than that, everywhere, look at that image of Russell Westbrook of the Oklahoma City Thunders and that white boy that he was joined with, you know what I mean? Like, it's all white privilege, motherfuckers, it's like a spectacle kind of, you know what I mean, white wealth created over time so they can afford to go see the Negroes put on that show for it. I'm just saying, ESPN was onto something when they had that draft that time like that. I mean, it was onto something subconsciously. But I still fucks with ESPN, man. Like, I mean, it would tell ya. She called me ESPN real quick. I'm just saying, I'm a sports head, you know what I mean, and ESPN is for sports heads. Although the city's vast sports, entertainment, and cultural offerings are open to all, it's perhaps little wonder why black people are hard to spot at, say, a Red Sox or Patriots game or the Museum of Fine Arts. It could be they simply chose not to go, or it may be the cost. African Americans in Greater Boston have a median net worth of just $8. Uh, nah. Nah, that don't sound right. African Americans in Greater Boston have a median net worth of just $8. That means they owe almost as much as the combined value of what they own, be it a car, a house, or savings. Finally, know that if you seek an apartment in the region using Craigslist, and if you're black, you can't count on getting equal treatment, even in this day and age, a Globe study found. This inquiry, like this Spotlight series, focuses on the black community specifically, not all communities of color, because blacks have had the longest and most contentious history with racism in Boston, in America for that matter. That's why I'm doing this, because it seems like a lot of black folks are not woke enough to recognize that shit. I, I don't know how come, because I thought being black meant you were naturally supposed to be woke in America. You know? But what does my African booty scratching ass know, right? Booty scratch, ah? Booty scratch, ah? Poo poo ba. Hey, they used to call me that at FBC, but we going to get to that embarrassing chapter of your daddy's life. To be a black person in Boston is often to be the only one in the office, the only one in the leadership position. It's lonely, said 45-year-old Bridget Brown of Dorchester, a communications specialist. You're aware of the racism, you're aware of the subtleties. It's like the air we breathe if you're black. For all the gains that Greater Boston has made, unfinished business on race is everywhere. In the 1983 series of stories, a team of Globe reporters took a hard look at racial equality in our region. It was not a pretty picture, but local leaders promised things would improve. 34 years later, the promise has yet to be fulfilled. For example, then, just 4.5% of black workers were officials and managers. That number has barely moved to 4.6% in 2015. Come on, y'all. Come on, man. That ain't right. That's 32 years, so the number moved zero point 0.1 percentage point. Okay, then in 1983, the Vault, an organization of Boston's most powerful business leaders, had no black people among its 20 members. Now, the new Vault, the 16-person Massachusetts competitive partnership, has no black members. Then, in 1983, this area's unemployment rate was about twice as high for blacks as white. Now, the gap remains, with black unemployment more than double the rate of white workers in 2014. A lot of times when Boston engages in looking at itself around race, it focuses on attitudes and prejudices, says James Jennings, professor emeritus of race politics and urban policy at Tufts University. With that, Boston certainly has made a lot of progress, but Boston needs to start looking at structural inequalities, racial hierarchy, poverty, academic achievement to move the needle further. Demographics and destiny. To truly explain why racial inequalities persist in the Boston area, it is necessary to understand how much can be blamed on demographics and how much cannot. Greater Boston stands out among the nation's top 10 metro areas in one distinct way. We have the highest proportion of white residents, nearly 3 out of every 4. So they going down. They got this awesome. When I say, hey, if you can find this, it's on the Boston Globe website. It's free. They're not charging for it. They're not the Washington Post or some other people like that. You know what I mean? Ooh, I just gave Donald Trump fodder against Jeff Bezos in Washington Post. His dumbass was gonna say something anyway, so fuck it. Yeah. I think he probably stopped listening to me after hour 1. No, he didn't. Since he can't read, he gotta listen to me. What up, dummy? I had just gone almost 15 minutes without invoking at this dumbass's name. I'm making progress. Maybe I don't need the weed, huh? Ain't that right, Stephen A? Second, now let me stop. But yeah, it has this awesome ass thing where, where it's showing like a graph. It's showing the racial makeup of 10 largest metro areas by percentage. And yeah, wow, this is interesting. Alright, before I even touch on the whole black and white disparity and percentages, I gotta touch on the Hispanic and black percentages. You got more Latinos in Boston more Latinos and blacks in Boston, more blacks and Latinos in Philadelphia, more Latino than black in Chicago, more Latino than black in Dallas, more black than Latino in Atlanta, more Latinos in New York, more blacks in Washington, way more Latinos in Houston, way more Latinos in Miami, way more Latinos in LA, even more Latinos in LA than whites, more Latinos in Miami than whites. Wow. If only black and brown can refuse to be enemies, yo. 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 That is wild. That is wild. That is wild as hell, yeah.